Hi, welcome to my shop again. This is part two of the crotch hollow form that I went through. Part one, did the whole entire outside shaping and design decisions and capture, how do I capture the crotch figure in the hollow form, did all the roughing out and shaping and grain orientation issues and things. Now we're going to get on the inside and show you the techniques that I use for hollowing the inside of it. On the inside, I will cover all of the hollowing, the boring bar use, the laser measuring use, reverse chucking methods, and finishing the bottom. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to use the Hunter nanograin carbide because of its efficiency. It takes small shavings and I can do fast, easy work with it. But the big advantage is that it's kicked on an angle. It's slicing through the fibers instead of scraping. So I'm cutting just above the center line. And look what happens. I start to make shavings, not sawdust, because I'm slicing in there. Okay, the first thing that I did is I drilled a drill hole. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cylindrical shape. Now that cylinder will allow the shavings to fall out, and I don't have to stop and fight shavings so much. So I did all that without having to stop and clean out shavings. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put the boring bar on an angle and come in here, and I'm going to open up this pocket where the largest diameter is. That's where the shavings are going to want to flow, and when I'm out here measuring my wall and cleaning up things and making this really nice, the shavings aren't going to fight me. So this again is a shaving relief thing. I want to make sure that I don't get a thin wall here. That would be bad news, and I'd come out here and start to vibrate. To do that now, I'm going to swivel the swivel around on an angle about 45 degrees to the boring bar so I can get up and undercut up into that shoulder. Now the cutter is dedicated to the left. I can only cut to the left. I'm cutting on the left-hand side of this. So what's left now is I'm pulling back almost towards my tummy. So if you watch my hand, I'm pulling towards me. There's no torquing forces when I go around to the left, and I can't get a catch. My system, when it's set up correctly, is never going to get a catch. It'll never get grabby or vibraty, so I can just use my fingertips, or I can pour the coal to it and make things happen faster. Now I've got a pocket in there hogged off, some of the waste wood gone, and we're going to set the laser to start measuring our wall thickness. I'm going to measure this area right in here. The long line of the card is the tangent, the area I'm going to work. I have to line that up with that area that I'm going to be working in. Bring that over to my cutter, and we're going to set the laser so that we're going to be, let's call it about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, now that gap between the cutter and the laser is going to be my wall thickness. That's my measuring device, that's my caliper. So that gap now has to be 90 degrees to the wall. Whenever I'm measuring, I have to measure with a caliper that's going to be 90 degrees to the wall. And so the card lets me do that when we set up the laser, the boring bar has to be in the position of where we're going to be doing our cutting. And in this case, it's on quite an angle to the lathe. Now, what if I set my laser here, set my laser, get everything set up with my gap, and then I go into here and start turning? Now I've changed the relationship of that 90-degree gap because I moved the boring bar. So always have the boring bar in position where you're going to be cutting. So now you see the laser is a dot, and when we're going to come over here, we're going to get elongated like that. That says I'm getting close to my wall thickness, and when the laser drops off and shines on the bed of the lathe, then the gap is left behind, and I've done my measuring. So let's do some measuring right up here at the mouth opening. So when the laser disappears, I stop. Let's take another cut. Stop. See, it's a dot up here, and then gets elongated. Let's slow down. Stop. 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 So that's the measuring. Make the laser disappear. I'm only about 1/8 of an inch thick there, so I don't want to go too far. I'm going to go in stages. Then I'm going to clean up the tool marks. Okay, and I'm going to use the 9 o'clock side of that carbide cutter to clean up the tool marks. So that's the process. Measure, 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 make the wall thickness, then clean up the tool marks and move on to the next stage. If I have a tool mark, how am I going to get the tool mark? Get a little muscle memory with my fingertips, turn the lathe on, and just sweep by. The laser's gone, so we don't have a visual cue. We listen for the little hiss. And we're just using our fingertips. When I have students here, I always describe this as it's just like taking a pencil and writing a curved line on a piece of paper. It's just that simple to get the tool marks out of there. Let's move on and measure another stage. There's where we left off. Measure, measure, measure. Clean up the tool marks. Don't go back. The top part of that is done. Don't go back. You can't go back. It's starting to dry out. It's not running true anymore. It's going to wobble. It's getting thin. It's going to vibrate. So don't go back. Ooh, that's perfect. All right. See what I've done here? I've put a swivel assembly that has a little bend in it. That allows me to get up under, cut the shoulders easier. So I switched it over. Now once I switch it, look where the laser is. Laser's in the wrong place. So now we got to redo the laser so that it's going to give us an accurate reading. The laser is an important part of this. We're not working blind in there, but here in the bottom of the vessel is where it really shines and makes a big difference. The no other measuring device can get down into many of these shapes and measure it accurately, so this gives us a way to keep uniform wall thickness. Okay, my goal has been throughout this whole hollowing process is to get the sidewall done, nice and measured, 1/8 of an inch wall thickness, and get the drill hole to go away. And when those two things happen, I need to switch gears and do two things differently. And this is where the fun starts. I can really see what's happening in the bottom here that's really cool with a laser. First thing I'm going to do is get dead on the center line. If I'm too high, it's going to ba-bump, ba-bump, the dreaded nub in the middle. If I'm too low, there'll be a cylinder here. And so I'm going to get on the center line. Previous to this, I wanted to be above center on the center line or above, never get below center with your hollowing. And now I want to get dead on center. Second thing I'm going to do is set the laser now with no gap. And now I can see exactly where I am, how deep I am. I can see the shape of the bottom, and I can see the depth. No more guesswork on where we're at. Set the laser right at the tip. No gap. So when I get right down in the middle now, I know exactly where my wall thickness is. I need to come down here, probably another 1/4 inch deeper. Second thing I'm going to do is get on the center line. I've got this threaded post tool rest that allows me to have very, very small incremental movements to raise and lower the tool rest and take the frustration out of doing this. But now scratch a line across the bottom, the lathe off, take my flashlight and look in there. All right, I'm a little bit high. This is a 1'8" thread, and I'm about 1/8 of an inch high, so I'm going to go about a full rotation to lower it. Scratch another line. Oh, that looks like I might be on. I'll know in a hurry. I'll know as soon as I make a cut. If it doesn't fight me, it'll melt away like butter. I know I'm on the center line. If it fights me, then I know I've got to make an adjustment again. I'm going to go over on the right-hand side of center and touch the wood there. The wood's going up. Nothing's going to happen. And then I'm going to make my way across the bottom. You hear the little hiss? I'm just going back and forth with my fingertips. So now I'm just making passes back and forth across the bottom, getting my depth. Don't push towards the headstock. I'm just going back and forth across that center line. Now you can see I've taken 3 or 4 or 5 cuts in there, and look where I'm at already. I'm already down in here. The progress happens very quickly when you're on the center line. I'll get that wall thickness in the bottom about 1/8 of an inch. So now when I'm hollowing, we're not going to be able to see those pencil lines. But watch. This is so cool. There's my depth of my bottom, right? There's a little bump. There's another little bump. All right, so let's get these bumps out of the way. I want to kind of make a flat bottom across there for a little bit. Now I got a bump there. Get rid of the bump. Get rid of the bump. Get rid of the bump. Gently into the sidewall. I don't want to be cutting up here. That's all done. One more just fingertip pass across the bottom. Nice and slow. Very gentle. Up the side. I'm listening for that little hiss of a shaving. That's telling me how much cutting action is happening. A little hiss. The shavings get packed in there and you can't blow them out. So this is a little trick using a box end wrench just to drag the big pieces out and make it easier. So now we're going to let this dry out a little bit so I can sand it. See, it's still wet. And So I'm going to just let this go for a few hours until my sandpaper doesn't clog up. Then I'm going to sand it, and we'll show you how I reverse it. All right, I'm back from sanding. Sanded. All I really needed with my shear scraping was 320, 400, 600 sandpaper. I'm going to reverse this and take off the waste wood on the bottom. And I want to do that by making a little donut of some kind, just a scrap piece of wood with a pad on it that I can bring this up to and bring my tailstock up. I've got my little drill dimple that I start with my glue block, and that's the centering point that I started with, still there, so I'm going to use that to recenter it. I'll never turn any of this away, so I don't have to worry about having this perfect, and it's not going to be perfect because it starts to dry out a little bit. It's going to get a little bit wobbly, so I can't expect it to run true. No worries, because I'm not going to do anything out here. I'm only doing on the inside of the bottom at this stage. All right, so I made a mark on here with my laser. You see that? So I only have about 3/8 of an inch left here in the bottom. That's what I intended. So now I'm going to bring my tailstock up. I'm going to take my pin out of just tap it out and have a cup only. Now that cup, when I'm holding it, won't damage the wood so deeply, and I don't have to worry about being too thin in the bottom. So I'll bring this up, and we'll bring this in and kind of get it close. I'm just going to touch it just very lightly just to hold it in place. And then I'm going to bring my tool rest over as a constant and hold my thumb here and see what kind of wobble I have. Okay, I've got a little bit of a wobble there. Find my high spot. I'm going to move it down a little bit to get this to run fairly true. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but get it to run fairly true. That's not running too bad. A little bit off there. I'm going to lock the spindle and try to turn it. Well, that's not tight enough, right? I need to turn a little bit more. Getting there. A little bit more. Just enough so it's going to drive with friction. So we can see I have a little bit of wobble there. No big deal. That's typical, and never going to get it perfect, so I don't worry about it. All right, now I'm going to use a very sharp tool. I just went and sharpened because I'm going to clean up this bottom. Want to get my speed up. First thing I want to do is establish a place where the height of where it's going to sit on the table. At the same time, get rid of all this glue and junk in here. Making shavings by just going into the side of the tree again. The direction that I'm traveling is important. Critical. Second, I'm going to choose the diameter of the foot. So this is just waste wood here. And I can whittle some of this away and say, well, is that where I want my foot to be? I think I want it to be a little bit smaller than that. This is a very thin, delicate piece. It's not a functional piece. So a small foot is going to lead to that. All right, so that's a size foot. That'll work, I think. That looks good. You can look at the rest of the piece. First thing, establish where it sits on the table. Second thing is to establish the diameter of the foot. The third thing is just to get this waste wood away. You need to go the correct way to the grain for supported fibers. So I'm going to do a pull cut coming from the center out so I don't rip it up. I don't want to have to sand all that damage. Pull cut. Nice shavings. Now I can make myself a little foot on here, follow the contour of my vessel in. Slow everything down now. End up shear scraping. Okay, right here is the high spot of my wobble. And I've cleaned that up, made a nice flow of the shape of the vessel down into the foot, and there's no tool marks there. Over here, I see a little tool mark. On both sides, I'm going to have a little tool mark left over, and that will sand away pretty easy. Just with maybe a 150 grit sandpaper, we'll take that out in a hurry. Right? So I'm going to transition this into the highest spot of my wobble, and then sand that little transition between the two. The last thing is just to clean up this little bottom area in there. That last little tenon where my drill dimple is, and where the tailstock live center is, that's going to have to get sanded off by hand. But I can clean this up, all except that little nub. Alright, I like to make a little detail in there that does something special on the bottom to make it look turned. So I'm going to use my spindle gouge with a steeper angle on it so that that point can make a little reveal, going to roll a little bead in here. So same cut, so with a push cut, bevel first, roll my wrist, get a little whisk of a shaving, roll my wrist and push my handle away from me. Going to roll a little bead in there. Okay, when I do that, I'm going to fuzz up the leading edge a little bit. So I'm going to come backwards the other way. Now the flute's pointing right directly at me, so the tip is straight up and down. And I can clean up that little corner so I don't have to sand it. And we're done. Okay, we're getting close now. I sanded off the bottom, got the little nub off, finished off the bottom. Now the big reveal. Let's put some finish on it. All right, we're just going to slobber on some Danish oil and watch the green and color pop. Oh, this is the fun part. I put the Danish oil on. There's the crotch right there, coming right through the middle. And let it soak in a minute, then we'll wipe it off and let it cure, and that's going to protect the wood. See how it sits on the table with a small foot. Okay, thanks for watching, and keep an eye on my website or AAW's site for my live remote demos that I'm doing about every 2 weeks. We'll have a live and interactive so that you can watch me do this, and it takes 2.5 hours for me to do this, not 10 or 15 minutes like is in a YouTube clip. So you get a lot more information from the live remote demos, and a lot more of the process, and a lot more of the details. So keep in touch, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.